Hello, welcome to Two Fitted. I'm Thomas.
My name is Dre.
And today we're going to be talking about Boston fashion. Dre, how do we feel about Boston fashion?
When it comes to Boston fashion, I think we kind of play the little brother role to a lot of other cities, especially like New York, LA, Atlanta. I think do all have better style when it comes to the people dressing. But I think a lot of it comes down to the fact that the people in Boston, I don't think fashion is their top priority. I think a lot of other things, like we live in such a highly educated city, a lot of colleges, a lot of universities, fashion is maybe the last thing on people's mind. And I think it could definitely use some improving.
That's fair. I think that there is a big college presence in this town, so I think that you have a lot of preppy styles as well. You know, that kind of Ivy look, which is in right now, I would say. I mean, you see a lot of people, even like boat shoes have had kind of a moment recently. But I think that preppy style has a long way to go in terms of being considered cool. I think it's only been within the past 2-3 years that it's really kind of kind of taken off and people actually appreciate it a little more. Part of that could also just be Tyler, the Creator, you know, with his like ties and vests and all that stuff. That definitely, I think, helped the preppy style really reach the mainstream today.
I definitely think that. And to add on top of that, I think a really important designer that is really important to the New England area in general is Bodhi, and the style that she's bringing, that kind of like Nantucket, like old money kind of style. I think that she's really putting on for the area. And that's just another person I want to give a huge shout out to, influencing the preppy style.
Totally true. Yeah, Bodhi is quintessential New England. And I feel like New England is so kind of slept on because New York is the only thing that people think about when they think of New England, really. But I think, like, for sure, you got, you know, Boston, obviously, and then also even like Maine and New Hampshire, really, I don't know in terms of fashion, but certainly in terms of aesthetic, you know, this is kind of extending outside of fashion, but someone like Noah Khan, man, that is someone repping New England.
Most definitely, with
repping
the flannels
New England.
And just that country vibe.
Exactly.
Sure. Most definitely.
And being from New England, too, you rarely hear anyone talk about New England, again, besides New York. So when they do, it's always kind of cool to, you know, hear someone talk about Maine or New Hampshire, anything other than the usual New York. But I get it, New York's one of the biggest cities in the world, and it is the mecca of American fashion, I would say.
Most definitely. So, switching gears, what do we think there are ways to improve the city's fashion? Like, of course, stores, we have Bodega that just recently closed. We do have concepts. We have stores like Riccardi. But I feel like other than that main streetwear vibe, there isn't much, you know, that the city has in terms of like higher fashion.
That's definitely true. You know, I think if you're talking high fashion, there's really only 3 places beyond, you know, the regular Copley and all that stuff. Concepts, Riccardi, and Alan Bilzerian. Those are the 3 that, and even then, Alan Bilzerian is kind of an if you know pick. Most of these places are all on Newbury Street. That's like the only place where you're gonna find high fashion in Boston.
Well, I would say even for Alan Bilzerian, it's not so much streetwear, because definitely Riccardi and concepts are super streetwear. I'll say with Alan Bilzerian, it's more of like a higher fashion, almost like classy.
They've got that avant-garde look.
Thank you.
Nowhere
Avant-garde,
else.
that's what I was going for.
Nowhere else has, you know, Carol Christian Pole. Who else? They got Rick Owens there, I think, and a bunch of other super small Japanese brands and super niche stuff that you can't really find anywhere else in Boston. Riccardi too has stuff like, they're one of 4, I think, places in the United States with an official Chrome Hearts account, which is really hard to get. Bodega closing
That was a
so
huge loss.
sad.
Bodega was a huge loss to the city
After
for sure.
20, I think it's something like after 20 years of being in the city, the quintessential, next to Concepts, the quintessential place for streetwear, Bodega closed, what was it, last year? And there's been, I know that they have said that they might bring the store back in 2026, but it's looking pretty grim. And that kind of extends to the overall feeling of Boston just not being that fashionable.
And I feel like with the closing of Bodega, I feel like that really went under the radar of like not a lot of people talking about it. I mean, in New England alone, like in the Boston area alone, I feel like nobody really talks about that in general because not a lot of people are even into the fashion space. But I feel like looking outside of just the like New England landscape of things and like even on social media, I didn't notice a lot of people talking about the closing of Bodega or, you know, giving their thoughts or opinions. I feel like that kind of just got brushed under the rug, which I was surprised about. And, you know, kind of ashamed to see that such an institution, you know, went, you know, when it went away, it went unnoticed for a long time.
That's true. That's true. I think, you know, a lot of people in Boston, they care about Fenway Park, medical stuff, maybe passing their classes. I don't think that a lot of people are fashion oriented in this city, and I don't think that we have a strong art presence, or at the very least, not as strong and diverse as somewhere like New York. New York has its fashion week and things like that, but Boston technically has a fashion week, which, did you even know Boston had a fashion week?
I actually did not.
It
So you
does.
just told me, I did not know that.
Yeah, and it's happening October 5th through the 11th, I believe. And that right there is an example of how just Boston and fashion just don't go together.
For ways to people who are maybe just starting out, maybe wanting to get into the fashion game, I definitely think Boston offers a lot of opportunity for those just starting out. Like, we do have a lot of vintage markets, and we have a lot of, you know, antiques. We have the garment district, a lot of things where people can get clothes for cheap and not necessarily have to, you know, drop a whole paycheck on something high end like you would find at like Riccardi or Alan Bilzerian. There's definitely ways that people can, you know, budget their fashion. I think that that's a lot of, you know, a lot of criticisms in fashion is that, oh, it's too expensive. I don't have the money. I don't know where to start. And I think that a great place to start is in these the found vintage market, Vivant Vintage, a lot of these places around the city that I think go undernoticed. And I think it's definitely, for our audience watching, I think that's, if you want to first get into fashion or you want to explore more about your own style, I think that going to these vintage markets and these shops are going to be really beneficial to help grow your own personal style.
Vintage is a great way to get into fashion. It is certainly the top tier gateway drug into, you know, as you said, developing your personal style and just having a lower barrier to entry. I think that once you kind of develop your style a little bit more, you might be more likely to want to spend a little more money and branch out too, and, you know, look at other brands and other places. But vintage is a great place to start, and I will say that Boston does have a pretty good vintage scene. Despite overall fashion-wise not doing well, the vintage scene in Boston is pretty good. We have a lot of pop-ups all the time, you know, in the Fenway area, or particularly Cambridge. Cambridge has so much stuff. We've got Cambridge Antique Market, Garment District, We Thieves, Found, The Attic, and just so many other vintage places for you to get quality stuff. And I think vintage is just a great place to start. And I see a lot more people, particularly our age, wearing vintage than anything else.
I also want to give a huge shout out to my people from the North Shore. If you're from the North Shore and you want a good vintage place, probably from Boston and Lynn, I want to give a huge shout out, only on Sundays. But yeah, we didn't mention that one, but for the North Shore, all my people in North Shore, Mass, probably from Boston and Lynn, that's where you got to check out.
I still have to go. It seems like a very cool place, and it seems like they have a lot of true vintage, which I think for me is the biggest thing when I'm personally shopping for vintage. Most people, I think, are just looking for cheap stuff, maybe also stylish, but doesn't have to be, too old. But I think if you're really looking for that antique, older stuff, like truly like, 90s and below, then you're gonna want to go to Bobby from Boston, one of the best places I've heard.
Most definitely. Well, I do think that after kind of all of these negatives that we might have said on the city, I do think that on the contrary, there is a lot of positives, and there maybe is hope for the fashion industry as a whole. I want to give a huge shout out to local companies like New Balance, like Converse. A lot of their HQs are in the city of Boston, Reebok as well. And I think that though we may not be the most fashionable and we might not be putting it on, we definitely do have the best production and a lot of the best high quality products, most definitely in footwear, are made in the Boston area. And I don't think that gets enough credit countrywide. In the conversation of like when Boston gets brought up, I don't think that our production ever gets brought up.
I think that you said it well. Boston's main draw is sneakers. If we're not known for fashion, at the very least, we are known for sneakers. You got New Balance headquarters, Converse headquarters, Reebok headquarters, all in the same city. All in the same city. And I think that points to sneakers and Boston really having a strong connection. And I do think that you see, even if there are people that aren't into fashion, you do see people that have nice kicks. And sometimes for people, that's all they need. That's all we have for now.
Next episode, join us. We'll be diving more in depth on some of our own favorite New Balance collaborations and why we think the brand is so successful right now. Thank you so much.
Bye-bye.